everybody, and welcome to the first Beebe Book Buzz of 2022. We're really happy to have you here. My name is Karen Stern, and I'm here with Beth Radcliffe and Bridget Black, all of us from the reference desk at the Wakefield Public Library. And as usual, we're here to share the things we've been reading recently and in hopes that we can help you find your next great read. We've got a couple of thrillers and some essays today, and we're going to start off with Beth.
So my book is The Savage Kind by David Cooper Haber. This is a noirish historical thriller. It's set in 1948 in DC. It involves two very different 17-year-old schoolmates, fiery outcast Judy Peabody and polite Bobby Sox Philippa Watson. Now, Philippa has just moved to the area and is very drawn to Judy. They both idolize their English teacher, a la Jean Brodie. But then the teacher disappears and a classmate is found dead. There are lots of twists and turns in this novel. More and more is revealed, and then it's turned around. Surprises abound. And no one can be trusted. Was their teacher truly interested in them, or did she have her own agenda? Even Judy and Philippa, can we trust them? After all, they're recounting a story. It's from their point of view in diary form, with each chapter alternating between the two teens telling it. So every chapter builds the information and the mystery. The writing is superb, with a lot of attention to atmosphere and tension, both mystery and relationship-wise, because there's a growing emotional, physical attachment occurring here. By the way, it's also a coming of age story. The building of the emotions affects the pacing, which builds and builds, but it takes the time to wander in order to build depth of character and their emotions. So I wanted to read you a couple of paragraphs from the book. The first one is good at showing how she builds the people, or he builds the people, excuse me. He does do women very well. That's why I keep on thinking it's written by a woman. She reminds me of a Klimt portrait. In the painting, his dark-haired woman, Adele something, is emerging from a geometrical gold leaf background. She's in motion, but still trapped somehow, like an anesthetized butterfly. Judy is like that woman. It's like she's flattened against a plate of sun-drenched glass, bits of her seeping through the cracks. And then the second paragraph, this goes more to how he builds atmosphere and setting. A complicated tangle of towers and steep angled roofs, the old sprawling house clung loosely to the side of the hills, as if at any minute it might let go and slide into the gorge. Behind it, the changing leaves flared in bright bursts across the mountain. Fall, decay, and chimney smoke stirred the air. The Potomac River shimmered like a black snake below us. So that, again, illustrates how well he does setting an atmosphere. It gives me chills just reading about it. Oh. So I wanted to give you a read-alike. I think it was a little hard to find read-alikes for this. It's so unique in some ways. But another new book by M.T. Edwardson, Nearly Normal Family. It's also about two teenage girls, best friends, involved with a murder. It's also multiple points of views and with intricate, complex characters. So that's The Savage Kind by John Cooper Haber.
Wow, that sounds great. It sounds like serious unreliable narrators. And
yeah, Leanne's gonna love it.
Yeah, it's so funny. You're going to hear some similar themes coming out in mine, which is also a pick of Leanne's. But first, we're going to hear from Bridget, who has something different essays for us today.
Yes. So I'm here to talk about The Wreckage of My Presence by Casey Wilson, who is an actress that some people might know from the show Happy Endings, a short-lived stint on Saturday Night Live. She's sort of a person who you've probably seen in things, but you might not know who she is necessarily. I am familiar with her, very familiar with her, because she hosts a podcast that I enjoy called Bitch Sesh, which is about the Real Housewives. passion that we share is the Real Housewives. So that's how I came to this book. That's how I came to this book. And it is essays. It's a collection of essays about sort of her life. She talks a lot about, she lost her mother at a very early age. So she talks a lot about missing her mom and sort of having to become an adult after her mom's passing, and the course she has taken, her husband, her children, various shows she has been on. And she is very funny. There's a real way with words, the way she tells stories in here. And I had heard some of them because she has told them on the podcast before, but they're so that it's just like, it's light, nothing's too heavy, even though it's dealing with some heavy subjects. A lot of it isn't like going to depress you, because they're told in a very humorous way. She talks also a lot about her father, who is I think you would describe him as a character. Like, that's the kind of person he is. Like, I do want to say, I of course lost it. There's a part where she describes how no one in her family like locks things. They don't lock doors. So she starts this essay called Open Door Policy by saying, when my husband and I first met, he was shocked to learn I didn't lock the doors to my car or to my apartment in Los Angeles. I shrugged. If people are going to get in, they're going to get in. He was horrified. Safety has never been my first concern, nor my second or third. This blasé attitude likely stems from the fact that my parents placed zero emphasis on it. They held firmly to the belief that people are inherently good, or they could become good with a little help, or if push came to shove, they probably, mostly likely, wouldn't do anything that bad. So it goes on to describe this and like describing her parents like getting cars stolen, like, and then like getting them back, and just very wild things that happen. And I think that you kind of get like a little bit of her tone in that. And it's a really, so I really enjoyed it. So if you enjoy kind of like irreverent, light essays with a healthy dose of like LA and celebrity, Casey talks a lot about her like descent into various new agey things that she has been interested in. Like her mantras, her like, right. Of course, describes the Real Housewives. I really enjoyed them, and it is because I do love her. There is a section of this book had kind of been passing around recently in the wake of the comedian Louis Anderson's death, because she describes an interaction with him at a post-Emmys party where he had just won for his role on Baskets, and they were talking about moms. They were talking about, and he was saying how he's channeling his mother, and he asked, and Casey was saying positive things about his performance, and he asked about her own mother, and she said, well, my mother has passed, and the way she tells the story, she's like, then he said something that no one ever asks, which is, he said, and what was her name? And her name was Kathy, and that really stuck with her. And there aren't actually like a lot of name droppy celebrity stories in here. Like, I would not say that. She talks about her own friends, some of whom are known people, but that's one of the only like known celebrities who isn't a close personal friend of hers that she talks about. So I really think that speaks to sort of the characters of both people involved and the kinds of essays she's telling, which are more, I think they're funny, but they're more touching, not like hot goss kind of thing. So yeah.
Wow, I like this the combination of mantras and the housewives and all. I mean, it just sounds like it's got a lot in it.
Yeah, it has a lot in there. And I will say, Casey Wilson personally convinced me to purchase a deck of Oracle cards that she recommended.
Are those like tarot cards, or
they are like tarot cards, but they're not, they don't have the tarot deck. They're
I also love this. I love the story about the locking and unlocking, because it's so true. Like, in families, there's like these splits between, sometimes within families, or when families come together or whatever. It seems to be one of those themes that really like divides people, and they're like, what, you don't lock anything?
I think that essay is maybe my favorite, because it has a lot of really hilarious details about things that went missing from her parents' house and like people who they interacted with. So That's really good. But I do think there's like something for everyone. And it's the kind of thing that you can pick up and put down. Like you don't need to read all of it at once because it isn't a linear narrative of her life or anything. It's like isolated incidents where she's talking about different things. I do think it builds to a conclusion, like the final essay does conclude something, but if you could read one and then skip ones that didn't seem interesting.
Right.
You've read other celebrity memoirs that are like that. No, I seem to remember reading one on your recommendation of a woman who starred in a TV show. And she also writes essays that are funny. And
I think so. A few years ago, I think actually it may have been on our last fireside when Jackie did essay collection.
Jackie did, yeah.
Jackie did what?
Jackie did essay collections. She recommended Little Weirds by Jenny Slate, who's also an SNL cast member at some one point. I think Jenny and Casey would share that they were short-lived SNL cast members. I believe Jenny Slate a little bit. And she recommended that. And another sort of, Jackie also recommended, I would say kind of another celebrity, more sort of adjacent essay collection would be the Gary Janetty, who I cannot remember the exact title of his essay collection right now. I should have looked it up, but he kind of is like celebrity adjacent and also housewives adjacent in his but he's a comedian who's written some essays, essay collection.
We'll get those up on the screen at the end for everybody who's interested. Okay, moving right along. I'm gonna talk about, it's funny, Beth, as you were talking about all your stuff, I was thinking, wow, these are similar books. I couldn't think of a read alike, but maybe yours is read alike for mine. We'll see. So this is actually, for those of you who know Leanne, this is one of her favorites from 2021. I believe this book was actually written in 2020, but it's by a British author who's a little bit kind of not really that well known here. And I think it just got picked up later. And then it was obviously 2020 was a slow year for a lot of things for a lot of reasons. So anyway, this is We Begin at the End by Chris Whitaker. And
I just started it.
Oh, did you? Yeah, it's I'm definitely recommending it. I was surprised by it. I love it when I find a book that really kind of defies description, and that's what, that's my first things to say about this book is I don't know how to describe it. It offers a kind of a little bit of a conundrum, like how does this British guy, he's probably in his 30s, who apparently according to him has only really visited Disneyland in the US, write a book that is set in California and Montana that just totally, the setting just completely evokes the feeling and the people of those places with so much authenticity that you just think like he must know it. He must have lived there or know, he feels like he knows the landscape intimately. And how does this good British kid write a story that is so totally American in feel? It's a sort of, again, it's coming of age crime novel but it has this real feel of sort of Western / noir, which are two really American kind of genres, right? According to the author, apparently what you do is you haven't been to Montana is you go to the library and you immerse yourself in travel books and coffee table books and you let your imagination take you the rest of the way. And he does a really good job. However he did it, it works, and you're just immersed in the settings of this quaint California seaside community that the book begins in, and then the huge canvas of Montana that provides refuge and healing for a couple of the main characters as the book progresses. And then that brings me to the other thing I loved about the book, which is the characters. The two main characters couldn't be more different. There's Walk, which is short for Walker, chief of police Walker of Cape Haven, California, who has grown up in this town that is slowly falling into the sea and knows every inch of it and every one of its residents. He's a middle-aged guy who finds the past really hard to leave behind, which is one of the reasons that he's very bent on protecting the other main character in the story, who was a 13-year-old girl named Duchess. And Duchess is the daughter of one of Walk's best friends from childhood. Her name is Star Radley. And she was the high school girlfriend of Walk's best friend, Vincent King. So as the story begins, Vincent King, he's central to the plot because he has been in jail for 30 years after an incident that shattered their teenage lives 30 years ago. So, and at the start of the book, Vincent King is about to get out of jail. These two characters, Walk and Duchess, and their relationship, which is a really odd one, given that he's this middle-aged lawman who likes order and the past, and she's this very angry 13-year-old misfit who calls herself an outlaw. That's really how she thinks of herself. And she's also, at the same time, she's trying to be the de facto parent to both her little brother and her mother, who has now kind of fallen into a life of drugs and unhealthy relationships. So Walk and Duchess, these two mismatched characters, are at the heart of this book, which is filled with a lot of fully formed, well-developed, many-layered, both primary and secondary characters. There's so many great characters in this book, and you know, you believe them all. Well, yeah, I'd say, yeah, you believe them all. Whitaker, he's good at the layers in both character and plot. He's also good at mysteries, again, kind of both in character and plot. There's the mysteries that are those kind of unspoken places between two people who have known, even if they've known each other for a long time. And then there's the other mysteries that make the reader want to keep turning pages. There are lots of them in this book. There are big mysteries, the whodunit variety, and there are smaller ones within relationships. And then there are some that seem small at start and then suddenly are huge in significance. I'm not going to spoil the plot by giving much away about it, because this book it's great for people who like plot as well. It's a book of crimes of the heart, crimes of omission, organized crime, criminals with hearts of gold. If those all sound like kind of tropes or cliches of noirs and westerns, well, they are. And also, I would still encourage you to give this book a try, because this author, this guy who kind of conjures Montana out of his own head and gets it right, is also capable of taking those cliches and creating something that really feels completely new. And I would also say very cinematic as well. Like this book is just begging to be made into a big, sprawling kind of, like noir western, whatever you want to call it. It's I found it surprising. I mean, I don't always love this kind of book, and I really just picked it up on Leanne's suggestion, so it was a nice surprise.
I love when you find a book that is not in your sort of genre and you're like, actually, I loved this. This is great.
Yeah, well, and again, because this isn't a genre. I think I don't even know what this is.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
everything. It's a little bit of everything. That's the best kind.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And the author, the other thing I would highly recommend is reading up on the author's story. He has, the way that he came to writing is a little bit of he writes very well about it himself. There's a Guardian article out there about, how writing saved my life twice. And he suffered from PTSD and basically got into it because of that. And he describes it really, really well. And you can see him in interviews online and stuff where he tells the story. It's pretty compelling. So that's We Begin at the End by Chris Whitaker. And I think that's all we've got for today. So thank you guys again for joining us, and we will see you next month on Beebe Book Buzz. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.